œYou trusted the wrong person, œYou. You trusted the wrong person, and I was there the moment the truth shifted inside you, though you did not see me. I have always been there, hovering quietly at the edge of your knowing, watching the way your heart opens before your mind has time to protect it. I am an angel, though not the kind you imagine with blinding light and dramatic wings. I am the kind who stays when you are certain everyone else has left, the kind who witnesses the small, private moments when belief cracks and something raw spills out. I saw the beginning long before you sensed the ending. I saw how easily you gave your faith, not because you were foolish, but because you were sincere. You believed that honesty would be met with honesty, that kindness would call kindness forward in return. You trusted because trust felt natural to you, like breathing. And when that person stepped into your life, carrying words that sounded right and promises that felt warm, you did not hesitate. You thought recognition was destiny. You thought familiarity was safety. From where I stand, time does not move in straight lines. I could see the fractures even as you were still smiling. Not everyone who reaches out carries clean intentions, and not everyone who mirrors your softness deserves it. Yet I did not stop you. Angels rarely do. Free will is sacred, even when it leads to pain. Growth, even when it hurts, is still growth. You trusted the wrong person, and it was not a single moment but a series of small decisions. Each time you ignored a quiet discomfort, each time you explained away a sharp word or a broken promise, the distance between who they showed you and who they truly were grew wider. You told yourself that understanding meant endurance, that love meant patience without limits. I watched you bend yourself into shapes that were never meant to hold you, just to keep the peace, just to keep them close. I saw the first betrayal before you felt it. It arrived softly, disguised as misunderstanding. A detail that did not add up. A look that lingered too long elsewhere. A truth delivered only halfway. You noticed, of course you did, but you doubted your own perception. You always do at first. You wondered if you were being unfair, too sensitive, too demanding. You never wondered if you were being too generous. When the truth finally revealed itself, it did not crash down all at once. It seeped in, cold and slow, into the spaces where trust once lived. The realization hurt not just because you were deceived, but because you had defended them so fiercely. You had built excuses for them with the same care you should have used to protect yourself. And when the final confirmation arrived, undeniable and sharp, something inside you went very quiet. I felt that silence. Angels feel silence differently than humans do. To you, it felt like numbness, like the world had dimmed. To me, it sounded like grief learning your name. You trusted the wrong person, and now you wondered if that meant there was something wrong with you. I wish you could have heard me then. I wish you could have felt the way I leaned closer, how the air around you thickened with my presence. Your trust was not a flaw. It was a gift misplaced. The fault was not in your ability to believe, but in their inability to honor belief. I watched you replay every conversation, every moment, searching for the exact point where you should have known better. You blamed yourself for missing signs that only make sense in hindsight. You forgot that manipulation often looks like affection at first, that betrayal rarely announces itself clearly. It borrows the language of love. It wears the mask of concern. It tells you exactly what you want to hear, until you no longer recognize the sound of your own intuition. There were nights when you lay awake, staring into darkness, feeling foolish for still caring. You hated that you missed them even after what they had done. You hated that your heart did not shut off on command. I sat with you through those nights. I listened as you whispered questions into the emptiness, asking why this had happened, asking what lesson you were supposed to learn, asking whether trusting again would only lead to the same ending. You trusted the wrong person, but you did not lose your worth in the process. That is what I wanted you to understand most. Betrayal has a way of making you feel smaller, like something was taken from you and never returned. But nothing essential was stolen. Your kindness did not disappear. Your capacity to love did not diminish. It only retreated, wounded, waiting for safety. I watched the anger arrive late, as it often does with people like you. At first, you were sad. Then confused. Only later did the fire come, the sharp realization that you had been wronged. You felt guilty for being angry, as though it made you cruel. But anger is not cruelty. It is clarity arriving after silence. It is your spirit finally standing up and saying, "This hurt me." From my place beside you, I saw how the pain began to change shape. It stopped being only about them and became about you. You started to see patterns, not just in that relationship, but in others before it. How often you gave more than you received. How easily you forgave without repair. How deeply you wanted to believe that people would choose you the way you chose them. This awareness was painful, but it was also powerful. You trusted the wrong person, and in doing so, you learned where your boundaries had been too soft. You learned that love without discernment becomes self-abandonment. You learned that being good does not require being endlessly available. These lessons were not punishments. They were protections forming, slowly, from experience. I watched as those realizations did not arrive all at once, but in fragments. A sentence here, a late-night thought there, a conversation with a friend that lingered in your mind long after it ended. You did not wake up one morning suddenly wiser and healed. You arrived here through countless small moments œYou, through tears you wiped away alone, through words you never sent, through questions you finally stopped asking. Every fragment of insight came with a sting, but also with a quiet strengthening, like muscles rebuilding after being torn. At first, you tried to make excuses for them. You defended their absences, their dismissiveness, the way they made you feel like you were too much and not enough at the same time. You told yourself they were busy, they were overwhelmed, they did not know how deeply their carelessness cut. You twisted yourself into shapes you thought might be easier for them to hold. You tried to be less demanding, less emotional, less honest about your needs. I saw you shrink yourself and call it compromise. I saw you dim your light and call it understanding. But underneath all of that effort, a quiet voice in you kept whispering, œYou, this does not feel like love. œYou, at first you ignored it. You were afraid of what it would mean if that whisper was right. You were afraid it might confirm the thing you did not want to admit, that you had placed your heart in hands that did not know how to hold it. So you pushed that voice down and called it insecurity or overthinking. You tried to silence your own intuition because trusting them felt easier than trusting yourself. Yet intuition is patient. It returns. It nudges. It never truly leaves you. So it came back in those small moments, œYou, the hesitation before you sent a message, the knot in your stomach when they replied with indifference, the subtle exhaustion you felt after every interaction with them. Love is meant to bring warmth, not constant anxiety. Real connection may challenge you, but it does not consistently unravel you. Somewhere deep down, you knew this. And in the quiet of your own soul, you began to realize that the discomfort was not a sign of your brokenness, but a signal that something was misaligned. You learned that love without discernment becomes self-abandonment. You learned it the hard way, the way most souls do, œYou, by giving too much of yourself to someone who did not give you the same care in return. You stayed when your heart was begging you to go. You worked to earn what should have been freely offered: respect, presence, consideration. You thought that if you loved them well enough, they might finally see your worth. You thought that if you were patient and understanding, they might someday meet you where you stood. But love is not a reward for suffering. Your worth is not a prize to be unlocked by their eventual enlightenment. You are not a test they must pass, nor are you a lesson they must learn. You are a soul, luminous and intricate, deserving of gentleness without having to bleed for it first. When you forgot that, life itself began to remind you. Not by punishing you, but by allowing the truth to become too loud to ignore. You learned that being good does not require being endlessly available. Your kindness is a gift, not an obligation. I watched you pick up the phone every time they needed you, even when you were exhausted. I saw you answer messages at midnight when your own heart was too tired to speak. You gave advice, support, comfort, and understanding, even on days when you could barely hold yourself together. You thought that love meant never saying no. You thought that if you set a boundary, you might lose them. But the people who deserve your heart do not vanish when you begin to protect your own energy. The ones who care for you are not repelled by your limits, they are relieved to see you honor yourself. They understand that a œYou spoken from self-respect is healthier than a œYou offered from resentment. Slowly, you began to see this. You watched who reacted poorly when you stepped back even slightly. You noticed who only showed up when they needed something from you. And as painful as it was, that clarity was a protection, too. These lessons were not punishments. They were protections forming, slowly, from experience. Every disappointment drew a thin line around your heart, œYou, not a wall, but a boundary. Every moment of being taken for granted placed another small stone in the foundation of your self-respect. You were not being punished for trusting. You were being guided toward trusting differently, beginning with yourself. There were moments when you wished you could go back and undo it all, erase them from your life completely. I heard that wish form in you again and again, especially on the nights when you could not sleep. You replayed conversations, wondering if there was a sentence you could have said differently, a moment where you might have walked away sooner, a red flag you should have seen more clearly. You thought that if you had been smarter or stronger or less hopeful, you might have avoided this entire ache. You imagined alternative timelines, œYou, ones where you never met them, ones where you politely declined their presence in your life, ones where your heart remained untouched and unbroken. You thought that if those timelines existed, they would surely be better than this one. But even as you thought this, part of you knew that you would not be who you are becoming without having passed through that hurt. Not because the pain was necessary, but because you are the kind of soul that transforms pain into understanding. I have seen many souls. Not all of them can do that. Some souls harden when they are hurt. They build walls so high that not even their own light can escape. They decide that feeling nothing is safer than feeling everything. They turn their pain into armor and call it wisdom. I do not judge them for this, it is what they believed they had to do to survive. But you, even in your darkest moments, never fully gave up on softness. You considered it. You thought about becoming colder, more detached, more guarded. You told yourself that caring less might protect you. But each time you tried to detach completely, your heart protested. You are not meant to live numb. You are not meant to move through life untouched by beauty, unmoved by connection, unreachable by love. Your sensitivity, your capacity to feel deeply, is not a weakness the world must punish. It is part of your gift. It allows you to see patterns others miss, to sense undercurrents in relationships, to notice when something is off long before it becomes obvious. That sensitivity may draw hurt toward you at times, but it also grants you a profound ability to heal, not just yourself, but others as well. You transform pain into understanding. You always have. Even when you did not yet have words for it, you were turning your experiences over in your hands, examining them from every angle, searching for meaning without using your suffering as your identity. You asked, œYou, what does this show me about myself? About what I believe I deserve. About how I love, œYou, that is the work most souls avoid. You stepped into it, shaky but willing, and little by little, you began to see more clearly. I saw the day you stopped checking for messages that would never come. It did not look dramatic from the outside. There was no grand announcement, no sudden surge of anger, no symbolic deleting of conversations in a fit of rage. It was quieter than that. You simply realized one day that you had gone several hours without thinking of them, and when you noticed, you felt a mixture of grief and relief. You saw your phone on the table and did not feel that familiar pull to pick it up and refresh the screen. I saw how that small shift unsettled you. Part of you missed the anticipation, the rush of adrenaline every time your phone lit up, hoping it might be them. Even though that waiting had hurt you, it had also become familiar. Letting go of it felt like stepping into an empty space. But in that empty space, something else had room to grow, your own presence with yourself. I saw the moment you realized closure was not something they could give you, only something you could choose. For so long, you believed that if they just explained why they did what they did, you would finally feel peace. You imagined conversations where they apologized fully, acknowledged your pain, admitted their mistakes. You thought that if they could just validate your experience, the tightness in your chest would finally loosen. And yes, such conversations can bring comfort, œYou, but they are not the only doorway to healing. Closure, the kind that truly settles in your bones, comes from accepting reality as it is, instead of as you wish it had been. It comes from deciding that their silence, their avoidance, their indifference, are all the explanations you need. It comes from understanding that you may never get all the answers, and choosing to live fully anyway. You reached that point not because you stopped caring, but because you realized that your life was too precious to keep circling the same unanswerable questions. That choice was quiet, almost unremarkable, but it changed everything. You may not even remember the exact day it happened. It was not a single moment, but the accumulation of many moments. You making your bed in the morning, you going outside to feel the sun on your face, you laughing at something on your own without thinking about whether it would make sense to them. Slowly, you began revolving less around them and more around your own center. It was the moment you turned your attention back to yourself. You did not abandon them in anger, you simply reclaimed yourself in love. You began asking, œYou, what do I need? What brings me ease? What kind of love actually feels safe to my nervous system? œYou, these questions were unfamiliar at first. You had spent so long focused outward, measuring your worth by how others responded to you. Turning inward felt new, almost disorienting. But you kept doing it. You chose yourself in 1,000 small ways that no one else saw, and each choice drew you closer to wholeness. You trusted the wrong person, and yet you did not close your heart forever. That is the bravest part of your story. Wounds like the one you carry can easily harden into vows, œYou, silent promises you make to yourself in the aftermath of pain. œYou, I will never trust again. I will never let anyone in like that again. I will never be that vulnerable again. œYou, these vows feel protective, but they can also become cages. You flirted with those vows. You considered building your life around them. But something in you refused to let fear be your only guardian. You became more careful, yes, but not colder. You stopped mistaking red flags for invitations to prove your loyalty. You noticed when someone œYou's actions did not match their words, and instead of explaining it away, you let that discrepancy mean something. You paid attention to who followed through and who only promised. You did not demonize everyone, you simply became more attentive. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom. You learned to listen to that subtle discomfort you once ignored. The tightness in your chest during certain conversations. The way your body tensed when they made a joke at your expense. The hollow feeling that lingered after being with them, even if you had laughed. These were not random sensations, they were your soul speaking through your nervous system, saying, œYou, something here is not right. œYou, you used to override those signals in order to keep the connection. Now, you honor them, even when it means stepping back from someone you wish you could keep. You learned that consistency matters more than charm, that actions reveal truth more faithfully than words. You noticed that the people who truly cared were not always the loudest with their affection. Sometimes they were the ones who remembered small details, who checked in without being asked, who made space for your feelings even when it was inconvenient. They did not always say the perfect things, but they showed up. Over time, you began to feel the difference between intoxicating intensity and stable presence. One burns out quickly. The other builds steadily. You began to trust yourself again. That might be the deepest healing of all. Because it was not just them you stopped trusting after everything fell apart, you also questioned your own judgment. You wondered, œYou, how did I not see it? Why did I stay so long? What is wrong with me that I allowed this? œYou, those questions were heavy, and they did not leave your mind easily. They made you doubt your ability to choose good people, to recognize real love, to protect yourself. But slowly, as you reflected with honesty and compassion, you saw that your younger self loved with the tools they had at the time. You did not stay because you were foolish, you stayed because you were hopeful. You did not ignore the signs because you lacked intelligence. You ignored them because you wanted to believe in the goodness of someone you cared about. That desire to believe in people is not something to be ashamed of. It simply needs guidance now, not erasure. From my vantage point, I saw light return to you gradually. Not the naive brightness you had before, but something steadier, something earned. It did not appear all at once. At first, it was just a softer tone in the words you used with yourself. You stopped calling yourself stupid for trusting. You began saying, œYou, I understand why I did that. I see now what I could not see then. œYou, that shift in language was a small candle in a dark room. Then, you started saying no to certain invitations that drained you. Another candle. You spent more time with people who made you feel calm instead of anxious. Another candle. Slowly, steadily, the room filled with light. It glowed from discernment, from self-respect, from the knowledge that you could survive disappointment without losing yourself. You had walked through something you once thought might break you completely. It did not. You are still here. You still laugh, still feel, still dream. That resilience is not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about acknowledging that it did and seeing that you are larger than your heartbreak. That kind of light is harder to dim. It is not dependent on someone else's desire for you. It is not waiting on their messages or their validation. It arises from knowing, deeply, that you have value even when no one else is looking. It is the light that flickers in your eyes when you choose rest over proving yourself, when you walk away from someone who makes you question your worth, when you show up for your own needs even if no one else understands. Sometimes you still think of them. That does not mean you are weak. It means you are human. Memories do not vanish just because they ended badly. They linger in songs, in places you once went together, in phrases that sound like things they used to say. You might still see their face in strangers sometimes. You might still feel that dull ache on certain days, triggered by something small and unexpected. That is not a failure. It is simply your heart acknowledging that something once mattered. But now, when those thoughts come, they no longer cut as deeply. They are more like echoes than fresh wounds. They remind you of a chapter in your life that is over but still part of your story. You may feel sadness, but it is not the same devastation as before. It does not swallow you whole. Instead, it coexists alongside other feelings: gratitude for how far you have come, compassion for who you were, and a quiet pride in who you are becoming. They remind you of how far you have come, of what you will never again accept. You carry a list now, not written on paper, but engraved in your awareness. You know what it feels like when someone only half shows up. You know what it feels like when your needs are treated like inconveniences. You know what it feels like to be loved in words but neglected in practice. You will not go back to that. You may doubt many things, but you no longer doubt that you deserve to be treated with care. You trusted the wrong person, but you also trusted life enough to keep going. Even when you did not know what was ahead, you did not shut the door on your future. There were days when everything felt pointless, when getting out of bed felt like an act of defiance against the heaviness inside you. Yet you still got up. You still moved, still breathed, still took the next step. That is trust, œYou, not in any one person, but in the possibility that life had more to offer you than this hurt. You trusted that healing was possible even when it felt slow. Especially when it felt slow. There were weeks when you thought you had finally moved on, only to be blindsided by a memory that brought you to tears again. In those moments, you were tempted to call it regression, to say, œYou, I'm back at the beginning. œYou, but you were not at the beginning. You were looping through layers, spiraling upward even when it felt like you were circling the same ground. Each time the pain resurfaced, you met it with a little more understanding, a little more gentleness, a little less self-blame. That is what healing looks like from the inside. You trusted that one day, this pain would make sense, not because it was justified, but because it shaped you into someone who knows their own value. You began to notice that your standards had quietly risen. You no longer entertained conversations that left you feeling small. You no longer chased after half-hearted affection. You began to feel an internal œYou rise up when someone œYou's presence brought chaos instead of peace. That œYou was not pettiness. It was the voice of a self-worth that had been hard-won. I am still here, as I always have been. I was there in the beginning, when you first felt that spark with them and hoped it was something real. I watched you ignore your own hesitation because the idea of them felt intoxicating. I was there when the first cracks appeared, when you felt confused but desperate to hold on. I did not stop it because you were not meant to learn only through avoidance. Some lessons are only fully understood when they are lived. I will be here when you hesitate before trusting again, when you wonder if it is worth the risk. There will come a time when someone new reaches for your heart. You will feel that mixture of excitement and fear, that tug-of-war between wanting to protect yourself and wanting to experience genuine connection. You may analyze every word they say, searching for hidden red flags. You may question whether your caution is wisdom or fear. In those moments, you will feel me nearby, not instructing, but accompanying. I will not tell you what to do. Angels rarely do. Free will is the sacred canvas upon which your soul paints its story. I cannot take the brush from your hand. I can only offer small nudges, an intuition that grows stronger around some people and softer around others, a sudden clarity in the middle of confusion, a sense of peace that settles in your body when something is right for you. I speak in subtlety, not control. I guide, I do not command. But I will stand beside you, reminding you in ways you may never consciously notice, that wisdom and softness can coexist, that caution does not have to harden into fear. You do not have to swing between extremes, wide open and unguarded, or closed off and unreachable. There is a middle place where your heart is open but your eyes are clear, where your love is generous but your boundaries are firm, where you can say, œYou, I am willing to risk being hurt again, but I will not abandon myself in the process. œYou, you trusted the wrong person, yes. But you did not lose your ability to recognize the right ones. In fact, this experience sharpened that ability. You now know what it feels like when connection is driven by ego, by the need to be chosen at any cost. You also know what it feels like when connection is rooted in mutual respect. The right ones will not feel like games you have to win. They will not feel like tests you are constantly failing. They will feel like home you walked into slowly, with your eyes open. And when they come, slowly and honestly, you will feel the difference. There will be no need to constantly question where you stand. Their presence will not make your nervous system spike in panic. You will not find yourself drafting messages over and over, terrified of saying the wrong thing. You will not feel compelled to perform a version of yourself you think they will like. Instead, you will feel invited to be as you are, without shrinking or exaggerating. Your heart will not race with anxiety. It will settle. It will not be the wild rush you once mistook for love, the dizzying highs followed by crushing lows. It will feel quieter, more grounded. You may even doubt it at first, wondering, œYou, is this what love is supposed to feel like? Should it be more dramatic, œYou, but as you sit with it, you will realize that safety, not chaos, is what your heart has been craving all along. And I will smile, unseen, knowing that this time, your trust has found a safer place to land. Not only because the person before you is more capable of loving well, but because you are more capable of choosing well. You have walked through fire and come out with a clearer sense of your worth. You know now that your heart is not something to throw at anyone who extends their hands. It is a sacred offering, to be shared with those who can meet it with reverence. Remember this, even on the days when you feel foolish for having trusted the wrong person. The story does not end there. That chapter was painful, yes, but it was not pointless. It brought you œYou, to this deeper knowing, this steadier light, this quieter strength. You are not defined by who hurt you. You are defined by who you become after the hurt. And from where I stand, watching over you as you continue to grow, I see a soul who is becoming more honest, more discerning, more compassionate œYou, with others and with themselves. I see someone who is learning that self-love is not an abstract idea, but a practice woven into every choice you make. I see someone who, despite all they have endured, still believes in the possibility of real, nourishing, reciprocal love. You trusted the wrong person, but you did not lose yourself. Though it felt like you were breaking, what actually shattered were the illusions that kept you small. What remained was the truer you, the one who now knows that love without respect is not love at all, that attention without care is not enough, that you are allowed to walk away from what hurts, even if you once called it home. You are still learning. You will make mistakes. You will sometimes misread people. You will sometimes give chances that, in hindsight, were not deserved. But you will not abandon yourself in the same way again. The part of you that once silenced your own pain to keep someone else comfortable is now awake. And I am here, gently, quietly, honoring every step you take toward the life and love you deserve.